The easiest way to include some of these powerhouse ingredients is to sneak them into your go-to meals. So for example, if you're making a salad, toss in a handful of chickpeas straight from the tin. If you're making a pasta, swap half the meat you're using for lentils in the sauce. The research is super clear. Beans feed your gut and help keep inflammation in check. Grains get written off as just carbs, but there's a big difference between refined grains that we consume way too much of and whole grains that are actually a rich source of anti-inflammatory compounds. I'm not talking about just opting for brown bread over white because it's basically just white flour in disguise. I mean real whole grains like buckwheat, black rice, and barley, and even some you might not have tried yet. What's different about these is that they keep the bran and the germ, which is like the grain's protective shell and powerful core. That's where you're going to find fiber, phenolic acids, flavonoids, and ultimately these are the things that reduce inflammation. One of the grains that I find most interesting is something called sorghum. Now you don't see it much in kitchens, but the darker varieties, the red and the brown types, are absolute gems. They're rich in a unique compound called luteinolidin and something called apigeninidin, and it sets them apart from other grains. In fact, there was this really cool study where people ate pasta made with red sorghum, white sorghum, or just regular wheat on different days. And just 2 hours later, they found that the red sorghum pasta increased polyphenol levels in the blood and improved antioxidant defenses. So you want to go for as much color in your whole grain as possible. Now, if sorghum feels a bit out of reach, there are two other grains I think are worth looking for. One is buckwheat because it's high in rutin. You can find it roasted as the whole grain and in things like buckwheat pastas. And the other one is black rice, which gets its dark color from anthocyanins, the same polyphenol that we find in berries. Try swapping your refined grains, things like white rice, for a whole grain of your choice. You only need about 200 grams of a cooked whole grain per day to get the benefits. It's a really easy way to just boost your level of anti-inflammatory foods without really changing much. Spices. All spices are phenomenal for inflammation. We only eat a little bit, but because they're concentrated sources of these anti-inflammatory plant chemicals, they support your gut microbes and they lower inflammation. And three really stand out. Ginger. Its flavor comes from compounds called gingerols and shakeols. And those are the same compounds that are shown in trials to lower inflammation markers like CRP, TNF-alpha. You don't actually need loads. About a thumb of fresh ginger or a teaspoon of concentrated ginger powder a day. Don't spend money on unnecessary ginger tea bags or supplements. Turmeric. This golden color is because of curcumin and all the other curcuminoids. It's been shown in clinical trials to ease pain and stiffness almost as well as ibuprofen. I cook with it all the time. The color alone is the reason why you'd want to use this. As well as lowering inflammation, it has been shown in some studies to lower the risk of cancer as well. All the more reason to get this regularly into your diet. And a fun one to try is nigella, also referred to as black cumin. Its star compound is something called thymoquinone, and it's got some of the strongest evidence for lowering inflammation in people within just a few weeks. It has a really lovely flavor, so if you haven't used nigella, honestly, you can pound it in the pestle and mortar, and it gives a sort of aromatic lift to any meal. But quality is super important. You want bright color, strong smell, and opt for whole spices. That way you know you're getting more anti-inflammatory compounds and there's been less degradation. You don't actually need that much either. Studies show benefits for as little as 1 to 3 grams per day across multiple different spices, which is about a teaspoon.